Hey everyone, it's Wei, and I have a little something to talk about that is kind of relevant now that Steam is coming out with the Steam Deck and Linux gaming is on the rise. Because I've been a Linux user, or like a full-blown Linux user, for about 2 years now, and like all my advice or stuff I talk about isn't an expert's thing. I am in no like regard a technological expert or even a game developer. I only did like some HTML in university and did some like Python in my own time and all that. But yeah, since it's kind of a hot topic at the moment, especially with the Steam Deck, I wanted to talk about a few things about Linux gaming because every year it's becoming more and more of a viable option now compared to Windows, which I think is great because when I personally switched to Linux, I found it actually a lot easier to set things up than on Windows, and it's for me it was a lot more stable than Windows. Obviously, that depends on which distribution you go through. If you're clicking on this video, I'm assuming you know at least a little bit about Linux and Linux distros, but just in case, distros are like different versions of Linux you can get. Since it's an open source project, anyone can kind of take the code and make it into what they want it to be. But think of it like Legos. Like Windows and Mac are like the builder's set, the ones designed to look like something specific, and you build it as per the instructions. Whereas Linux is more of the bucket of Legos with all the different colors that you can make whatever you want. Which is how I'll I'll go through it. But like, even though we have the Steam Deck coming up, we still have some roadblocks that are apparent with Linux gaming as it is right now. But one thing I do want to say is that most of my Steam library works fine. There's only like a handful of games that straight up don't work now, thanks to Proton, which is Valve's compatibility layer that translates Windows shit into Linux shit. There is a little bit of a I suppose a latency because of that, but most of the time it's not noticeable, and the extra overhead that Windows has on like my hardware a lot of the time outweighs the performance hit I get from like Proton. So a lot of the games I have actually run better on Linux than it does on Windows. So most of my games run fine, even stuff that isn't supposed to. One which you'll see on screen now is Insurgency Sandstorm, which we'll get into later again in a second, but it runs perfectly fine despite not supposed to be running on Linux. Even though there was a Linux version in the works apparently, but that got scrapped because of the market at that time. But yeah, with stuff like Insurgency Sandstorm, one of the roadblocks we currently have, which hopefully the Steam Deck will circumvent, as apparently Valve has talked about, working with anti-cheat so that it can run through Proton, is client-side anti-cheat at this moment in time is kind of problematic for Linux gaming. If you want to play online, it won't let you if it's like, easy anti-cheat and BattlEye, which are two very common ones. And that's really disappointing because most of these games work fine otherwise. It's just you can't play online, which is really sad for me. But DRM is another one, or Digital Rights Management. Thankfully, Valve is pretty pro-Linux, so Steam never gets in the way, but stuff like Call of Duty has like a deliberate DRM that stops you from playing the game on any hardware or software it doesn't want you to. So unfortunately, I don't know if that will ever be circumvented. I'm sure if the demand becomes high enough, that will end up becoming a viable option, and we might have Call of Duty and other like Apex Legends and stuff like that available for Linux, or at least playable through Proton. But if you play other games like Titanfall, where the anti-cheat is server-side, or if it's VAC, which is Linux compatible, you will be able to play the games just fine. Another thing that I think is a bit of people don't really talk about is the gatekeeping in just the Linux community, which I think is really sad, because it seems like, obviously not everyone in the community, only, a certain few, like a few vocal bad eggs, that are like, once something becomes easy to do within Linux, it's not Linux anymore. Like Linux Mint, which is a very easy to use Linux program. It heavily mirrors Windows. It's got the same layout. If you're used to Windows, you'll be used to Linux Mint in no time. A lot of people dismiss that as like, oh, well, why don't you just use Windows if you're going to use Mint? But as soon as something becomes easy, it's not Linux anymore, apparently, and gets kind of dismissed by some people in the community, and I think it pushes people away, like, because all the easy options, in some way, are shamed online by people in the Linux community, and a lot of fights break out in like Steam forums that talk about wanting like Linux support for certain games, which is really sad. And then there's, the really privacy-focused people, which I understand them. I mean, I'm a privacy-focused person too. That's one of the reasons I switched to Linux as well. But, people get so uppity about the values of Linux, and I think it pushes a lot of people away. One of which being Proton. Proton as well was a talking point. Like, some people call Proton a mistake, because it de-incentivizes it de-incentivizes developers from making like Linux native games, which I can kind of see the logic behind. It makes sense, but I think we do need that push to get people onto the platform to like get our audience up, because like we're kind of in this vicious cycle of the platform of Linux doesn't have enough users, therefore developers don't develop for Linux. But because developers aren't developing for Linux, people won't move to Linux because their software isn't running on it. So, it's a bit of this back and forth. But I think we do need that bridge, that platform to kind of propel Linux into the mainstream. And I think the Steam Deck is something that might do that for people, because I believe the new Steam OS runs on Arch Linux. I could be wrong on that, but that's just what I've heard. The last kind of roadblock I think we have is proprietary technology. Two games come to mind, which is Cry of Fear, which I believe uses some Microsoft technology. It might not, but it just does not run well on Linux. The flashlight doesn't work. I don't think any of the lighting effects really work. Simon has 3 hands at some points. It's kind of a sight to behold. But yeah, there's just some games that use Windows or Microsoft proprietary stuff that, unless is replaced by some other alternative, just won't work. There's some that have workarounds, like Resident Evil 0 and 1. Their cutscenes rely on Windows Media Player, but you can get that running on Linux, which is what I've done. And it's not really that hard, but yeah, I managed to get it running, so like there's small fixes like that where you can get around it. But other times you have stuff like Phasmophobia, where it uses Microsoft voice recognition, which is really unfortunate because the rest of the game works fine. It's just you can't talk to the ghosts, which is a really cool feature of the game. So, kind of disappointing, but, hopefully, maybe if the devs see this, I know it's probably not as easy as just swapping out the voice recognition technology, but just know that we do exist, and we would very much appreciate if we were able to experience the game. And even if you aren't able to just replace it, maybe adding a radial menu of things to say, like that you can just click on, so at least we can have that part of the game without you having to replace the voice recognition software. But anyway, I think that's about it. Thanks for this little mostly unscripted video. I have like a bullet point list of things I wanted to talk about for this, but yeah, hopefully that all made sense, and I hope I didn't confuse anyone or say something stupid. Either of the two would be bad, but yeah, I'm just really happy to see Linux gaming getting some traction, because honestly I think it's a more sustainable platform than Windows is for gaming, and I think it might even provide more freedom for developers, because there's all sorts of software you can use to develop for Linux, whereas I think Windows can support. Yeah, Windows can run Vulkan. Yeah, sorry, but anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.